Let's talk about selecting an American president. Here in this first video, we're going to talk about things that are not in the Constitution. Political parties and primaries and all of these things that lead up to voting for the president are not in the Constitution. They've just come about over time as political parties have developed and as states have decided how to run their own primary elections. So keep this in mind as we talk about selecting an American president. Some things are very much in the Constitution and formal. Some parts of it are informal and have developed over time as political parties have grown. So you know that nowhere in the Constitution does it mention political parties. This is not something that the founders wanted to have in America, but they understood that it was most likely to occur since the British system of government had political parties. So as the new Congress was elected, people gathered in Congress, and you found out that people thought like you, and you hung out with those people, you voted with those people, and political parties became part of the constitutional government that we have. So obviously the Federalists were people who thought we wanted a strong federal government. The Anti-Federalists did not. So that's the very beginnings of the political parties. It might be helpful to think about running for president today, not so much as whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, but it's also, I think, helpful to think about your view of government. So if you're running for president, are you someone who believes in a strong active government, federal government, or do you think that states and local governments are the best to solve the problems? So maybe if you think about a big stack of pancakes, and in this example, pancakes would be the United States, and the syrup would be the government. If I were to tell you to put the syrup on liberally, you would put a lot of syrup on. If I were to tell you to put the syrup on conservatively, that's very little syrup. So today, Democrats generally are more liberal, meaning they want more government. They see government as a way of solving America's problems. Only the government of the United States has the resources, the power, the money to fix a lot of the problems that we face as a country. So homelessness, people who are hungry, environmental issues, global warming, those things, they see only the government has the power to fix that. Whereas if you're a Republican, you tend to be more conservative, meaning I don't want as much syrup. Syrup costs money and doesn't really help. Generally, conservatives, Republicans see states and local governments handling problems better. Now, of course, most Americans are somewhere in the middle. They do want some syrup on their pancakes, but not a bucket of syrup. And they don't eat their pancakes dry. Somewhere in the middle. So if you are a Republican, you tend to be more conservative. If you are a Democrat, you tend to want more syrup, more government. You tend to be more liberal. So once you've decided what party you're in, then you must begin the process. Now, the next presidential election is 2024. We have our elections for president in even years. So we have them in 2024, there'll be one in 2028, 2032, 2036, and so on. So if you decide you're going to run for president, first of all, you know that you don't use your own money. Commercials and posters, internet ads are not free. It takes a lot of money. So you begin raising money. You declare that you're running for president. You form a committee saying that you're running for president, and then people give money to that committee so that you can buy television commercials or signs, posters, whatever you might need. Once you've declared that you're running for president and you filled out the paperwork, there is some paperwork you have to fill out with the federal government saying you're running, saying where all your money's going to go, then you start competing. The first step really is competing in primaries. Again, there's no mention of primaries in the Constitution. These are all functions of state political parties. So here's how it works. You decide you're going to run for president. You formed a committee. People are giving you money. You now have to take on all the other people in your party. So you've declared your party, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, and there may be 10, 15 people in your party who are doing the same thing as you. So now you have to compete against them. And every state will have primary elections starting in the winter of that presidential year. So in January of 2024, so it's a brand new year now, states like New Hampshire will have a primary, and you will go against all the others in your party in New Hampshire. And if you get more votes than everyone else in your party in New Hampshire, then you'll win the primary there. But remember, in a primary, only people in your party will vote. So the Democrats will vote for the people running for Democrats, and the Republicans will vote to try to narrow it down to one Republican. Most states don't allow you to just walk in and vote for whichever party you want, but some do. So if you win the primary, if you start winning primaries, more people will notice you, they'll start giving you more money, and you'll gain momentum. If you're not winning any primaries, chances are after a few of them of not winning, you'll drop out. So when I say primaries, I mean New Hampshire and Iowa, South Carolina. States will have primaries about every week. Each state gets one primary. So you'll go to New Hampshire once and see how you do. You'll go to Iowa and see how you do. You'll go to South Carolina and see how you do. So this is done through the winter and spring of that election year. And generally, after 3 or 4 weeks of a primary, 3 or 4 different states, we'll have a general idea of who are the best candidates really in each party. And by the time you get to spring, it's generally down to one. Most other candidates have dropped out because they're not winning. And the more that you win, the more money and recognition you get, which means it's easier for you to win in other states. So you start gaining momentum. So here's how it works on the timeline. Primaries are in the winter of an election year. So in 2024, for about 5 months, 6 months or so, the primaries will go on. But generally, by the time you get to around March, you know who the nominee is going to be because they've won most of the primaries. So by the time you get to June, it's really down to one person. All the other candidates have dropped out. Because every time you win a primary, you gain what we call delegates. Think of delegates like poker chips. A certain number of them, you are the nominee of your party. And they will give speeches and nominate the person who's won in the primaries to be their presidential candidate. So it's the formal nomination for each party. So if you're the Democrat and you've won all the primaries, come summer, you will be the nominee at the convention. And it's at that convention where you'll pick your running mate. Same thing for the Republican. Win in the primaries through all those states, beating out everyone else who's a Republican. By the time you come to summer, you'll be the one man standing or the one woman standing. You will pick your running mate. So now, in the summer of the election year, so halfway through the year, we'll have one Democrat for president, one Democrat for vice president, one Republican for president, one Republican for vice president. They will then head into the fall. And during the fall, that one Republican will debate the one Democrat, probably in 3 to 4 debates. There'll also be a vice presidential debate. They will debate and campaign against each other through the fall of the election year. By the time we get to November of the election year in 2024 or 2028 or 2032, whatever year we're talking about, that's when the people will vote. The people will vote in the popular election in November. But as we study the Constitution, we realize that's not really how we choose the president. Officially, the Constitution says that the Electoral College will pick the president. In November, that's when people in Ohio and Maine and Pennsylvania and Arkansas will vote. Whoever gets the most votes, let's just say Ohio. Let's say that Joe Biden runs for re-election and wins Ohio. He gets more votes in Ohio than does his competitor, who's the Republican. Then Joe Biden wins Ohio. In December, the last month of the year, the electors will meet in the state capital of Columbus, and the electors will vote for Joe Biden. Then it's the new year, and whichever presidential candidate got the most or the majority in the Electoral College, which we'll talk more about the Electoral College in the second video, whoever gets the most or the majority would be the president and be sworn in on January 20th of 2025. So again, why January 20th? Because the Constitution says January 20th. The 20th Amendment says the president will be sworn in on January 20th. So this is more of the informal of how someone becomes a presidential candidate, competing in the primaries, which again are not in the Constitution. These are something that the political parties do in each state. The conventions in the summer, not mentioned in the Constitution. And then, of course, throughout the fall, they campaign against each other for the popular vote in November. But even that, the popular vote, meaning when the people vote, does not officially choose the president. It's those electors that meet in December that actually officially pick the president. And we'll talk more about that in video 2.